It was supposed to be just another speck in the sky, a faint traveler wandering through the vast emptiness between stars, catalogued as it pierced the boundaries of our solar system. 3I Atlas, named by the same system that had identified countless objects before it, didn't initially raise any alarms. But the more we looked, the less it made sense. It moved too fast. It glowed too brightly. And worst of all, it refused to behave like anything we've seen before. Then came the moment everything changed. The James Webb Space Telescope locked its instruments onto the object. And what it revealed wasn't just unsettling, it was impossible. The data suggested that 3I Atlas isn't a comet, not in composition, not in structure, and certainly not in intent, because what it's doing now shouldn't be happening, and what it's headed towards may not be random, it may be us. When 3I Atlas was first observed in early July, astronomers noticed it had a hyperbolic orbit, a classic sign that it wasn't native to our solar system. That alone was exciting. Objects like Oumuamua and Borisov had captured the world's imagination in the past, entering and exiting our solar system with barely any time to study them. But 3I Atlas was different. It wasn't merely cutting across space, it was descending into our system, and its path was shockingly aligned with the ecliptic plane, the very flat disk where the planets orbit the sun. That detail triggered immediate suspicion among scientists. Interstellar objects shouldn't follow such an orderly route. They're supposed to arrive at wild, arbitrary angles, not glide effortlessly through the very zone where life on Earth was born. The probability of such an alignment by chance is vanishingly small. It's like throwing a dart across the galaxy and hitting the bullseye on a moving target. Was this object just lucky, or was it aiming? But that wasn't the only anomaly. As 3I Atlas approached, it began to exhibit course corrections, tiny shifts in trajectory that defied expectations for an inert, natural object. It would slow, then speed up. Its orientation subtly changed as if it were adjusting, as if it were scanning. The scientific community braced for impact, metaphorically speaking. No one was ready to declare it artificial, not yet. But the data whispered something uncomfortable. This object wasn't drifting blindly. It was arriving, with purpose. When James Webb locked onto 3I Atlas, expectations were clear. It would behave like a comet, emit water vapor as it warmed, shed dust as it approached the sun. Instead, it did something else entirely. Webb's infrared instruments peeled back the haze of particles surrounding the object and found nothing familiar. The coma, that glowing tail typically made of sublimated ice and dust, was composed of highly reflective metallic fragments, possibly alloys. Some readings even suggested compounds that shouldn't exist outside of controlled laboratory environments, materials forged not by nature, but by engineering. More alarming still, the heat signature of 3I Atlas was uniform. It wasn't radiating in the erratic, uneven way natural bodies do. Instead, it emitted thermal readings consistent with active thermal regulation. It's as if the object was cooling itself. And when Webb scanned its surface under the near-infrared range, it didn't find a pockmarked, irregular rock. It found geometry, smooth planes, right angles, a repeating pattern that looked, for lack of a better term, designed. Scientists scrambled to explain the data. Could it be a shattered fragment of a Dyson-like structure? A derelict probe from an extinct civilization? Or was it something new? A type of object we've never imagined, operating under physics we've yet to understand. Whatever it was, the label comet could no longer hold. This was no frozen ball of dust. This was something else entirely, something far beyond our current definitions of celestial objects. Then came the signal. At first, it was dismissed as background noise, an anomaly in the data. But as more observatories pointed their radio telescopes toward 3I Atlas, the same pattern began to emerge. A low-frequency pulse, repeating at irregular intervals. It didn't match any known cosmic sources, not pulsars, not quasars, not magnetars. Instead, it seemed localized, tied to the object itself. And then something stranger happened. The pulse began to change depending on who was listening. Ground stations in South America, Europe, and Asia all reported slightly different sequences, as if the object was not just emitting a signal, but responding. One set of readings even matched frequencies used in deep space telemetry, the kind we use to communicate with our own probes. Analysts fed the data into AI interpretation models, and what came back was cryptic, bursts of structured logic that hinted at syntax, structure, intent. It was as if the object wasn't just speaking, but adapting its language, probing our machines, learning our patterns, modifying itself in real time. The Webb team then made the decision to halt public updates, triggering a wave of speculation that hasn't stopped since. Because if the object is emitting a signal, and that signal is targeted, who is it targeting? As the scientific world struggled to keep pace with the revelations, the institutions responsible for safeguarding public information went dark. NASA scrubbed several public entries from its small-body database, including earlier orbital simulations. ESA issued a cryptic statement suggesting 3I Atlas posed no immediate threat, but avoided any mention of the Webb findings. FOIA requests filed by journalists were met with silence or heavily redacted responses. And then came the leaks. An internal NASA memo hinted that the object had been tracked longer than previously disclosed, perhaps even before its official discovery. Webb may not have been the first to observe it, just the first to reveal the truth. Insiders claimed that U.S. Space Command had classified parts of the data, citing national security interest. But what could possibly make a comet a matter of security? Unless it wasn't a comet. Unless what they found was so far outside our current understanding that releasing the truth would collapse the public's sense of stability. If 3I Atlas is artificial, then someone, or something, made it. And if it's here now, the question is no longer what is it? It's why now? As more data from 3I Atlas was quietly disseminated among a handful of academic institutions, one particular research group began to analyze the frequency modulation patterns in the signal, not from an astronomical standpoint, but a neurological one. Their findings were nothing short of disturbing. According to their internal report, portions of the signal resonate within the human alpha and theta brainwave ranges, frequencies associated with cognitive relaxation, intuition, and even dream states. It appeared, inexplicably, that the signal was not just broadcasting in the electromagnetic spectrum, but tuned to interact with the very biology of human thought. Some researchers began to speculate that the object may be deploying what they called a psychological imprint, not to communicate in the traditional sense, but to plant patterns of thought, seeds of concepts, abstract impressions, a kind of remote suggestion mechanism operating on a planetary scale. This could explain the reported surge of shared dreams among those working directly with the data, some of whom described vivid visions of impossible structures and landscapes made of light. Were these coincidences or a response? Was the signal just meant to inform or transform? Meanwhile, a small team of engineers and data scientists at a private observatory in New Zealand made the decision to do something no government agency dared attempt. They responded. Using a focused array of high-gain antennas, they beamed back a simple binary sequence, prime numbers, followed by a Fibonacci chain, the most basic attempt at interstellar contact. What happened next was never officially confirmed, but satellite logs from nearby facilities showed that minutes after the transmission, the signal from 3I Atlas inverted its modulation. It didn't repeat its prior sequence. It changed. Some described it as a handshake, others as a warning, but most agree. The object registered our reply. Whether that reply was welcomed remains unclear. The team went silent shortly afterward. Their servers were seized under emergency telecommunications orders. Their lead engineer posted a single cryptic message before deleting all their accounts. We weren't supposed to answer. As the mystery deepened, a surprising source emerged. Ancient texts. Not pseudoscientific ramblings or fringe theorists, but credible, peer-reviewed scholars who began to notice eerie similarities between the 3I Atlas event and mythological accounts across multiple ancient cultures. From the celestial visitors in Sumerian cuneiform tablets to the burning chariots of Vedic scripture and even the sky serpents of the Nazca, there were recurring themes of objects from the stars that descend in silence, bearing unknown knowledge, shifting thought and belief wherever they pass. One comparative linguist noted that the number 3, encoded in the designation 3I, features prominently in numerous sky god mythologies, often associated with judgment, change, or destruction. Coincidence? Or had we encountered this before and simply forgotten? Could 3I Atlas be a returning cycle, something humanity has faced and forgotten over and over again? As speculation grows and more of Webb's data is quietly siphoned into encrypted archives, a few remaining analysts have focused on one haunting possibility. What if 3I Atlas is not a message, not a visitor, but a trigger? A countdown. A silent mechanism set to observe when a civilization becomes advanced enough to notice, and then begin. Begin what, exactly? They don't know. But one cryptographer working with pattern recognition algorithms claims there's a time-encoded structure buried in the data bursts. Not a traditional clock, but a recursive mathematical decay, as if something is building toward a final state, and that final state is approaching exponentially. If that's true, then 3I Atlas didn't just arrive. It started something. And the silence we're experiencing now? That's not peace. That's waiting. Just when astronomers believed 3I Atlas had offered all the anomalies it could, new observations revealed something far stranger. As the object continued its silent journey, the James Webb Space Telescope recorded a reflection, not from 3I Atlas itself, but from a point behind it, in deep space. This reflection wasn't caused by any known celestial body. It didn't match the albedo of asteroids or the scattered light of galaxies. It was a concentrated echo of energy, as if something invisible were trailing the object, not gravitationally bound, but synchronized. Some hypothesized it could be a field generator, a cloak, or even another structure, hidden just beyond the range of detection, except through its subtle interaction with the fabric of space-time. One theory proposed that 3I Atlas was merely the visible component of a much larger system, stretching into dimensions or frequencies our instruments can barely grasp. In simpler terms, we were seeing the shadow, not the source. As part of an experimental study, a biotech lab in Switzerland was granted access to the waveform structure of the 3I Atlas signal. Their goal was to test whether the frequencies had any effect on organic molecules. What they discovered defied modern biology. When exposed to precise modulations of the signal's core pulse, human DNA, specifically non-coding regions long considered junk, began to exhibit strange behavior under quantum microscopy. These strands vibrated in harmonic patterns, as if resonating with the signal. No changes occurred in coding DNA, but the so-called junk strands lit up, aligning and twisting into geometric spirals that matched ancient symbols found in petroglyphs across multiple continents. The implications were staggering. Was this signal not just informational, but activational? Could 3I Atlas be interacting with the very foundation of what makes us human? And if so, for what purpose? Another oddity emerged from NASA's Deep Space Network. While tracking 3I Atlas, they noticed subtle periodic deviations in its gravitational interaction with nearby objects. These weren't chaotic or random, like those caused by uneven mass. They were rhythmic, a pulsing mass signature, almost like a heartbeat. Every 47 minutes, its gravitational pull would shift, as if it were flexing or unfolding an internal structure we couldn't see. This kind of behavior is unheard of in natural celestial bodies. Mass does not pulse. Gravity does not fluctuate in periodic beats, unless the object was redistributing internal systems, adjusting something inside. Some engineers likened it to the artificial mass dampeners used on theoretical spacecraft to stabilize warp dynamics. But that kind of technology doesn't exist, at least not here. The object wasn't breaking physics. It was demonstrating physics beyond us. As the world's attention turned elsewhere, distracted by wars, economies, and digital noise, a few researchers noticed a chilling final pattern. In the weeks following the full scan of 3I Atlas by the James Webb Telescope, a global trend appeared, not in the stars, but in human behavior. Radio silence from amateur astronomers. Online forums discussing the object began to vanish. High-level university researchers resigned without explanation. Multiple space agencies quietly locked down research programs related to interstellar objects. Some called it a coincidence. Others whispered of a coordinated blackout. But one astrophysicist left a note on her whiteboard before disappearing. It's not that we can't speak. It's that something else already is. And just like that, the story of 3I Atlas began to fade from the public narrative. Not because it was unimportant, but because the signal had done its job. It shifted something, and now we're standing at the edge of something we weren't meant to understand. Not yet. Just as 3I Atlas began reaching the perihelion of its path, a lesser-known array in Antarctica, Project Infera, reported something almost no one was ready to process. A second object, mimicking 3I Atlas's behavior, had been detected on a mirrored trajectory coming from the opposite side of the solar system. Unlike the original, this second body emitted no tail, no infrared glow, no radio signature. It was completely silent, invisible to everything except the most precise gravitational sensors. The orbital path suggested that the two were moving in symmetric resonance, converging not just in time, but in alignment, one approaching from the edge of interstellar space, the other seemingly waiting beyond the sun, synchronized like two blades of scissors closing around Earth. The discovery was classified before even hitting peer review. Some call it a glitch in the tracking system. Others believe it was always part of the plan. Because if 3I Atlas isn't alone, then this isn't a visit. It's a deployment. In the days following this twin revelation, the James Webb team noticed something even more unnerving. While observing the region surrounding 3I Atlas, they recorded a drop, a measurable fluctuation in the local quantum field. This drop didn't occur in the object itself, but in space around it, as if the very vacuum of space was being pulled, stretched, manipulated. Quantum vacuum fluctuations, normally erratic and chaotic, had become synchronized. That level of field control is theoretical, only hinted at in concepts like zero-point energy and warp field mechanics. The implications were terrifying. 3I Atlas wasn't just a passive traveler. It was interacting with the structure of space-time, possibly rerouting or anchoring something we couldn't see. Some physicists whispered it could be an anchor point, a stabilizer for a portal, or worse, a relay node. Because if space itself is being shaped, then the signal may not be leaving from the object. It may be arriving through it. In a leak that was almost immediately scrubbed from the web, a group of bioinformatics researchers ran a simulation to test the theoretical interaction between the waveform of 3I Atlas's signal and the CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing system. What they found was terrifying. When the object's harmonics were introduced into a simulated biological ecosystem, specific DNA sequences began to destabilize in the model, not randomly, but selectively, erasing regulatory genes related to memory consolidation, long-term planning, and higher-order cognition. It was as if the signal was designed to deconstruct identity, stripping intelligence down to instinct. One anonymous researcher described it as a civilizational lobotomy. While nothing has yet been proven in the real world, the mere fact that the simulation produced predictable, targeted degradation of intelligence sparked a new wave of fear. What if the signal isn't here to communicate, but to reset? Buried within the structure of the signal from 3I Atlas, linguists and mathematicians found a repeating signature, a non-random symbol embedded within a burst pattern that, when graphed in 4D temporal slices, revealed an image, or rather, a blueprint. It wasn't written in any language known to humanity, but the ratios mirrored those found in human architecture: golden spirals, sacred geometry, fractal recursion. Some believe it could be the design of a machine, others think it may represent a construct that predates our concept of structure entirely. The terrifying part? This same pattern has appeared before, once in a Mesopotamian tablet long dismissed as decorative art, once carved into bone artifacts recovered from Göbekli Tepe, and faintly mirrored in the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro. Across cultures, across time, across extinction events, the same shape, the same ratios. As if whatever 3I Atlas is, it's not new, it's ancient, older than Earth, and it's been here before. Shortly after Webb's sensors began to focus on 3I Atlas's internal structure, an unexplained anomaly occurred. Members of the observation team began reporting temporal disorientation, not time loss, but time confusion. Some forgot what they were doing mid-task, others swore entire segments of data were different than what they had documented hours earlier, and a few even insisted they had already seen the signal before, months ago, despite no prior exposure. At first, this was attributed to fatigue, but when the same pattern repeated across international observatories, independent labs, and even among AI systems designed to track signal sequences, the reality became harder to deny. The signal was altering cognition, not in a hypnotic or invasive way, but more subtly, rewriting perception, deleting anchors in the memory chain. Theories emerged proposing that 3I Atlas emits a waveform that disrupts the brain's ability to form long-term contextual memory, essentially fragmenting reality and making us forget we ever knew the truth. Despite the calculations proving that 3I Atlas was moving at astonishing interstellar speeds, a disturbing contradiction emerged. When cross-referenced with deep sky parallax data, 3I Atlas wasn't moving at all, or rather, it was everywhere at once. Its signature appeared in telescopic records that predated its discovery. It cast shadows in regions of space it never passed through. And in some radio telescope archives, its harmonic resonance was faintly present years before its entry. This forced researchers to propose a theory that shook the foundations of astronomy. 3I Atlas wasn't traveling through space. It was anchored in a fixed point of reality, and reality itself was moving around it. In simpler terms, it was the still eye in a universe that spins. A lighthouse in the dark, not drifting through the sea, but watching it. And perhaps waiting for a ship to crash into its light. Around the time 3I Atlas passed the orbit of Jupiter, a strange phenomenon began to unfold on Earth. Subtle changes in magnetosphere data, unusual seismic rhythms in tectonic plates, and a measurable shift, almost imperceptible but consistent, in the Earth's axial tilt. Not large enough to cause catastrophe, but enough to realign satellite telemetry, alter GPS precision, and confuse migratory animals. The source? Undetectable by normal metrics, until gravitational wave detectors picked up a soft but persistent pulse, matching the frequency of 3I Atlas's signal. The implications were monstrous. The object wasn't just interacting with the human brain or local space, it was nudging Earth itself, not with force but with frequency. And if it could alter planetary alignment without touching it, then the next step might not be to move Earth, but to reshape what Earth is. In the vault of a forgotten private library in Aleppo, Syria, a historian studying pre-Islamic texts found something no one could explain. A hand-copied manuscript dated 2,300 years old describing a star with no fire, a body with no death, shaped like a serpent but silent as dust, passing through the firmament and freezing the hearts of kings. The description was accompanied by a drawing of a spiral-tailed object arcing into the solar sky, with a sequence of glyphs that, when run through modern cipher software, matched the waveform visualizations of the 3I Atlas signal. This was impossible. The waveform had only been captured in the last 6 months, and this text was millennia old. Either the manuscript was a fraud, or worse, someone, somewhere in the past, had already witnessed this event. And if that's true, then this isn't a first contact, it's a return. And every time it returns, it leaves behind a whisper, in the mind, in the earth, in the ink of forgotten scrolls, until we are ready to hear what we weren't meant to survive. And so, as the signal fades from our headlines but not from our atmosphere, one truth remains. 3I Atlas was never just a comet, never a mistake in calculation or an optical illusion in the sky. It is a construct, a message, an arrival encoded in frequency, memory, gravity, and myth. It has reappeared across time, across languages, across civilizations that vanished before ours even emerged. Its spiral has been carved into stones, encoded in ancient genomes, whispered in dreams, and now, decoded by telescopes we thought were built to look outward. But maybe they were built to look inward. Because what if 3I Atlas wasn't crossing into our solar system, but emerging from something buried within it? What if its orbit isn't celestial, but ritual? A loop that completes every time we get too close to unlocking something we were never meant to access. A loop that resets the equation, not to punish us, but to prepare us. The James Webb Telescope didn't just confirm that 3I Atlas is not a comet. It confirmed something far more disturbing. We are not alone. We were never alone. And worse, we were never in control. The next time you look up at the night sky and see a bright object that shouldn't be there, don't ask what it is. Ask what it wants.